The moment she uttered those words, the engagement was off. My father, a factory worker, stood stunned as my stepmother splashed tea on his face, laughing hysterically. Surprisingly, my stepfather made no effort to reprimand her. The stain from the specially cleaned suit spread rapidly, though thankfully the lukewarm tea posed no risk of burns. Amidst the chaos, I handed my father a napkin while Tom, in a panic, hurriedly dabbed at the suit. Despite his concern for my father, Tom couldn't suppress a chuckle at his parents' absurd behavior. Meanwhile, my father remained silent, his posture rigid. Suddenly, he straightened up, pointed at them, and declared, "Fine then, I'll ruin your company." His voice carried a resolve I had never heard before as he led me away from the O'Connor household. Tom scolded his parents sharply before hurrying to join us. "I'm terribly sorry, Dad. I'll make sure my parents apologize," he said, deeply apologetic. "No need," replied my father solemnly, patting Tom's shoulder. "We're through with them now. I'm Yvonne Warner, a 26-year-old office worker raised single-handedly by my father since my mom passed away when I was young. My dad managed a factory and despite his busy schedule, never missed any of my school events. He often returned to work right after, and I admired his dedication. In college, I dated Tom, 2 years my senior. Tom was gentle, sincere, and popular, yet accepted my confession despite concerns about his parents, which he kept private. We continued dating, and although he lived independently since college, he visited his parents, always appearing weary. Tom always prioritized me, which made me proud. Eager to introduce him to my dad, I felt a mix of apprehension and anticipation when we unexpectedly ran into my dad during a date. "Dad, aren't you supposed to be at work today?" "What's up?" I asked. "Oh, Yvonne, there you are. Just got back from a client meeting." "And who's this?" My dad's serious demeanor could be intimidating, and Tom appeared equally sullen upon meeting him, visibly nervous. "Right, Dad, this is Tom O'Connor. We're dating now," I introduced. My dad, not typically stern but possessing a serious aura, observed Tom closely. Tom, in turn, greeted him respectfully. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Warner. I'm Tom O'Connor. It's an honor to be dating Yvonne." It was the first time I introduced Tom to my dad. Tom, looking tense, bowed deeply and greeted my dad. My dad, happy to accept Tom, smiled warmly and struck up a conversation. "So, you're Yvonne's boyfriend. Don't be so nervous. Take good care of her, okay?" my dad said warmly. "Yes, I'll do my best. Thank you," Tom replied gratefully. As they continued talking, Tom gradually relaxed, and soon they were getting along well. I felt a wave of relief seeing the two most important men in my life getting along. I had worried about what might happen if my dad didn't like Tom. We couldn't stay long as my dad had to return to work, so after bidding goodbye, we parted ways. As I turned to Tom, who looked somewhat dazed, I asked, "Is everything okay? You seem a bit off." Tom's demeanor suddenly changed. "That was really your dad, right?" I was taken aback by his odd question but affirmed, "Yes, of course. Why do you ask? Is something wrong?" Tom nodded slowly, crossing his arms as he seemed lost in thought. I couldn't help but grow curious and press him gently. "What are you thinking about so intensely?" He hesitated, then replied vaguely, "Oh, it's nothing serious, just something on my mind." His evasiveness left me unsettled, and despite my attempts to inquire further, Tom avoided elaborating. I started to worry, even though Tom had said he liked my dad. What if he didn't actually approve? The thought gnawed at me for days until Tom called, requesting an important talk. Nervous about what he might say after our last meeting with my dad, I headed to the cafe where we agreed to meet. Spotting Tom through the glass, his somber expression amplified my anxiety, but I resolved to greet him cheerfully. "Hey Tom, sorry I'm late. Did you wait long?" I approached quietly, tapping his shoulder gently. "Whoa, Yvonne, you startled me," Tom exclaimed, clutching his chest in surprise. I was taken aback by his reaction. He seemed deeply troubled. Sitting across from him, I ordered from the waiter, all the while growing more anxious as Tom remained visibly gloomy. I wanted him to open up, so I broached the topic cautiously. "Tom, what's on your mind? You seem really bothered. Is something wrong with my dad?" I asked, hoping for reassurance. Tom looked up abruptly, denying any issue with my father. "No, not at all. I respect your dad a lot. It's just that, He trailed off, his gaze falling again. I sighed inwardly, realizing I would need to coax the truth out of him. Summoning my courage, I pressed further. "If something's troubling you, Tom, I want to understand. Please tell me what's bothering you," I urged gently. Taking a deep breath, as if steeling himself, Tom finally began to speak. "Actually, there's something I need to tell you about my parents. It's a bit of a long story, But I think you should hear it, Tom began hesitantly. As Tom recounted his story, I was taken aback by its shocking nature. His parents judged people harshly based on their education and job, showing little class or consideration for others. They had meddled incessantly in Tom's relationships, criticizing his girlfriends and causing them to break up with him. It was clear why Tom was apprehensive about involving them in our future together. I told him not to worry. We can keep our marriage separate from his parents, just involving them in the formalities. My dad likes Tom, so what's the problem? It's okay. My dad liked you, so you don't have to worry, I reassured him. Really? That makes me happy. When I met your dad, I was surprised by how different he is from my own parents. I thought if I marry you, I'll become the son of such a great man. But getting married means my parents become your parents too, and I couldn't decide, Tom said, his expression brightening momentarily before he sighed deeply. However, Tom's mood shifted as if he had come to a decision. He looked up at me with a determined expression, then apologized. When we go to meet my parents for our marriage, can we have your dad come too? I want them to see there are such respectable people around. It might not change them right away, but I hope it does, Tom proposed earnestly. Okay, I'll talk to my dad about it, but I wish you had discussed this with me differently, I replied, feeling caught off guard. Oh, sorry, I'll handle it better from now on, Tom hurriedly assured me, then properly proposed marriage. After accepting Tom's proposal, I promptly discussed it with my father. Initially hesitant, my father agreed when Tom formally came to ask for my hand in marriage. We then set a date to meet Tom's parents. On the appointed day, dressed up and standing at Tom's family home's front door, we waited nervously. Given the stories I had heard, I couldn't help but feel apprehensive about meeting Tom's parents for the first time. Trying to lighten the mood, my father chuckled and offered words of encouragement. No need to be so tense. Tom's parents are just a bit overly concerned. Stay confident, he said, giving me a reassuring pat on the back. Feeling a bit calmer, I nodded gratefully. Tom rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. We exchanged puzzled looks, wondering if they were home. Tom rang again, growing slightly anxious. Finally, he excused himself and went inside first, leaving my father and me waiting nervously on the doorstep. After what seemed like an eternity, Tom emerged looking flustered. Before I could inquire, he began making excuses with a strained smile. Sorry for the delay. Please wait a moment, we'll be ready soon, Tom said hurriedly before disappearing back inside. I exchanged a concerned glance with my father, unsure of what was happening inside the house. My father sighed in exasperation, and a knot of worry tightened in my stomach. This awkward encounter could potentially jeopardize our wedding plans. My father, though patient, had little tolerance for dishonesty, and I feared the worst as we waited on Tom's doorstep. When Tom finally emerged and awkwardly invited us inside, my apprehension grew. As we entered, I noticed Tom's parents waiting with unsettling expressions, his mother with a sly grin and his father appearing disinterested. We were ushered into the living room where hastily prepared, lukewarm tea was served. The atmosphere was tense and Tom's silence added to my unease. Despite the discomfort, I resolved to proceed with the introductions. Tom, visibly regaining his composure, formally introduced my parents and then us. I felt touched by Tom's thoughtful gesture of including both my father and me equally in his introduction. However, any warmth I felt was quickly chilled by his parents' sneering response. In a swift motion, Tom's mother reached for a teacup, her actions conveying a dismissive attitude. Factory worker father, let's call off the engagement then, my mother-in-law declared, her words hanging heavily in the air. Without hesitation, she splashed tea on my father. Beside her, my father-in-law chuckled alone, showing no sign of reproach towards her actions. The tea quickly stained the suit my father had meticulously cleaned for this important occasion. Fortunately, the lukewarm temperature meant there was no risk of burns. Shocked and dismayed, I hurriedly offered my dad a handkerchief while Tom, visibly panicked, attempted to blot the tea from his suit. Anger simmered within him as he scolded his parents, who only laughed callously in response. Meanwhile, my father remained ominously silent. Suddenly, he stood up, pointing directly at them with a voice that carried a rare intensity. Then I'll ruin your company, my father declared, his tone filled with a resolve that startled me. Without another word, he took my hand and led us out of the O'Connor house. Tom's voice echoed with apologies to his parents as he followed us hastily. I'm truly sorry, father, mother-in-law. I'll make sure my parents apologize later, Tom pleaded as we retreated to our own home. No need, we're finished with them, my dad responded gravely, his hand resting consolingly on Tom's shoulder. Back at our house, my dad swiftly changed out of his stained clothes. Outside his room, Tom continued to apologize earnestly, but my attention was consumed by the shock of what had transpired. I never anticipated such disrespect towards my father. Anger burned within me at how Tom's parents had treated him. Sitting on the living room sofa, my fists clenched as I replayed the upsetting events in my mind. I knew dwelling on it wouldn't change anything, but I couldn't shake the anger and disappointment. Eventually, my dad finished changing and joined us in the living room, accompanied by Tom, who immediately bowed his head in apology. "Yvonne, I'm truly sorry. I never expected them to behave like that, especially towards your dad." "I'm deeply sorry," Tom expressed earnestly, understating the severity of the situation. His sincerity was palpable. He didn't ask for forgiveness, knowing it was not easily granted. Feeling the weight of responsibility, I reached out and took Tom's hand as he knelt beside me. "I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have suggested involving my dad without knowing everything. I didn't foresee it turning out like this. I apologize sincerely." Turning to my dad, I offered my heartfelt apologies. "Dad, I'm sorry this happened because of my thoughtless suggestion." My dad looked troubled, his silence speaking volumes. None of us had anticipated such a confrontation, but my dad's resolve was evidently serious. "I have to ask, Dad, was what you said true? Are you really going to follow through and ruin their company?" I asked hesitantly, searching for clarity. My dad glanced briefly at Tom before nodding firmly. "Yes, it's true. I'm going to make sure their business is ruined. Given their current struggles, I've been contemplating my options. This seems like the right opportunity to sever ties," he explained with unwavering determination, his eyes reflecting his resolute stance. He runs an industrial company and serves as both the factory manager and CEO of a prestigious local enterprise, a role he achieved after starting as a worker in the same factory. He sacrificed his dream of becoming a painter to raise me alone after my mother's passing, dedicating himself tirelessly to his career in the well-paying local factory. His hard work and dedication earned him multiple promotions, eventually catching the eye of the former CEO who groomed him to take over the company. When the former CEO, also the previous factory manager, retired, he handpicked my father as his successor. Under my father's leadership, the company expanded its operations, acquiring various subsidiaries. It was during our recent visit that we discovered one of these subsidiaries was managed by Tom's father, my father-in-law. This crucial detail should have been clarified earlier, but Tom's mother's rash actions prevented any meaningful conversation. Tom simply wanted to explain that his father worked for a subsidiary of my father's company, but his parents' biases and hasty behavior escalated the situation unnecessarily. If they had listened attentively, perhaps things wouldn't have spiraled out of control. During the serious conversation with Tom, my father revealed the management challenges his company faced and his reluctant contemplation of layoffs to streamline operations. "I've been considering downsizing certain areas to improve efficiency," he admitted with a troubled smile, clearly troubled by the prospect of letting go of any employees. Following this discussion, my father approached Tom in a subdued tone. "I've decided to shut down that subsidiary, which will undoubtedly affect your parents. It's a harsh decision, but are you prepared for the consequences?" he asked solemnly. Tom hesitated briefly before meeting my father's gaze with resolve. "I've already severed ties with them. What they did was unforgivable. Part of the consequence should be facing the fallout from their actions. More importantly, I want them to reflect on what they've done, including this incident," Tom replied firmly. However, he then made a heartfelt request. "I know this is an awkward time, but please allow me to formally propose to Yvonne. I understand the trouble I've caused with my parents, but above all, I want to be with her. Please forgive me." My father stood with crossed arms, contemplating Tom's words. Despite the recent incident, moved by Tom's sincerity, I joined in, pleading with my father. "Please, Dad, I know things have been difficult, but I want to be with Tom." After considering our request for a moment, my father sighed as if resigning himself to the situation. "If you both are committed to this decision, then so be it. But there's a condition," he stated firmly. "Your parents are executives in their company. I need to know your plan for their employees. If you cannot address this responsibly, then I cannot support your marriage." With that, my father dismissed Tom and withdrew to his room without even looking at me. Days later, Tom presented a plan for his father's company's employees. He had arranged a meeting with my father, and when I returned from work, they were deep in discussion. Tom had meticulously outlined potential job placements for all the employees and was presenting it to my father. "I hope these suggestions meet your approval. I'm committed to assisting in their transition and contributing to the company's ongoing success," Tom said earnestly, bowing respectfully to my father. "Additionally, I would like to work at your company, I am willing to work without pay until these employees are settled and demonstrating results. I want to prove my commitment and make up for any difficulties caused. Tom's sincerity shone through as he expressed his desire to take responsibility for his family's situation. I understood that our marriage would inevitably be delayed, but it was a necessary step. Welcome back, Yvonne. You heard correctly. I apologize for making such a significant decision without consulting you, but I didn't want to be the only one benefiting from this, Tom said with regret. I know, it's selfish of me. Dad, please let me work in the company with Tom. I'll work for free alongside you, and I want you to accept Tom's proposal. I pleaded desperately. Tom attempted to dissuade me, but I remained steadfast, earnestly begging my father. Throughout our impassioned exchange, my father remained silent, his arms crossed, until my repeated pleas finally prompted him to uncross his arms and quietly nod in agreement. Meanwhile, Tom's parents still hadn't offered an apology. My father had patiently waited for days, but their time for redemption had passed. Time's up, he murmured, beginning the preparations to take over his father-in-law's company. Days turned into weeks, and finally, the inevitable day arrived, the collapse of the company. In response, Tom's parents summoned us to their home, where we were greeted by a throng of angry protesters, former employees furious over the sudden closure. It became evident that Tom's father had failed to inform them properly, opting instead to shift the blame onto us by summoning us there. Upon seeing us, accusations flew immediately. There they are, the source of all our troubles. They ruined everything, not me. Tom's parents pointed accusatory fingers, deflecting blame and attempting to portray themselves as victims. Especially that woman, who seduced our son and used her father's influence. We are the real victims here, so stop blaming us. Others joined in, hurling insults and criticism towards my father and me, desperate to evade responsibility for their own actions. Despite the parents' vehement accusations, Tom, visibly upset, stepped forward to address the former employees. Please everyone, hold on. Yes, my father's company has collapsed, but they are also responsible. I want to assist all of you who have been unfairly affected by securing new job placements. Please hear me out. Gradually, the uproar subsided, and the employees redirected their attention towards us. Tom proceeded to call out each person's name, announcing their new roles and easing their concerns. As each placement was confirmed, relief swept through the employees. However, Tom's parents interrupted, causing a scene. Tom, what about us? Why are you ignoring us? His mother demanded. Yes, Tom, we told you we're victims too. Tell us our job placements. If you do, we might even consider forgiving that man and allowing your marriage to that woman. Ignoring their outbursts, Tom bravely detailed the events leading to the company's bankruptcy, a situation exacerbated by his parents' actions. I apologize for the disruption caused to all of you. Thanks to a generous CEO, your jobs are secure. Let's channel our frustrations constructively and rebuild together. Turning to my father, Tom bowed deeply. I deeply apologize for the trouble caused. Thank you for considering my request. I promise to dedicate myself wholeheartedly. Moved by his sincerity, the former employees also bowed to my father, acknowledging his generosity. In contrast, Tom's parents remained defiant, the only dissenting voices amidst the display of gratitude and reconciliation. Don't be deceived. That man ruined our company, and that woman encouraged him. Face the reality. You're all struggling for jobs because of their actions, right? Despite Tom's parents' desperate appeals, everyone had already heard Tom's account of the events. They completely disregarded his parents' accusations. Even my father ignored their words, focusing instead on reassuring the former employees. He promised to provide them with more details later, and they left feeling relieved, expressing their gratitude to my father with bows. Once the former employees had departed and the atmosphere quieted, Tom's parents began lamenting their predicament. We're losing this house we use as collateral. Yes, we're going to be homeless. What are we supposed to do now? They continued to blame us, refusing to acknowledge their own responsibility. Tom sighed in exasperation at their stubbornness. I don't care what you think. You brought this upon yourselves. Why don't you show some remorse? He scolded them, but his words fell on deaf ears. Unable to tolerate their parents' persistence any longer, I finally lost my patience. All this time, you've caused nothing but trouble for Tom, boasting about being business owners and only caring about titles. Isn't that the reason we're in this mess? My words seemed to ignite a retort from Tom's parents, but my father intervened decisively, silencing them with a stern look that brooked no argument. A true business owner takes responsibility. You should have fulfilled your final obligations properly, my father admonished them. Left speechless by our united front, Tom's parents had nothing more to say. As we walked away, they were left behind, facing the consequences of their actions. Eventually, they lost everything: their company, their house, their land. They never fulfilled their obligations to the former employees and evaded accountability until the end. After losing everything and facing legal consequences for their deceitful actions, Tom's parents reached out to him for help, only to be coldly rebuffed due to Tom having severed ties with them. They ended up in jail, and since then, there had been no communication from them. Even if they were released, they still owed a debt to their former employees, perpetuating their dire situation. Following these events, Tom and I decided to leave our jobs and join my father's company. We committed to working without pay for the first month as promised. During this period, we encountered a former employee from Tom's parents' company who had joined our team. This person eagerly approached us at work, extending gratitude to my father for the opportunity, thanking Tom for arranging the job, and recalling how I had assisted them with materials which I had initially forgotten. Shortly after joining, the former employee left, expressing heartfelt appreciation and a renewed determination to work diligently. Touched by their words, we hastened to my father's office to share the encounter. He warmly welcomed us and presented several thick envelopes. "What's this, Dad?" I asked in astonishment. "It's your salaries for the past months." It couldn't all fit into one envelope, my father replied with a cheerful laugh. We were stunned. It hadn't been long since we started, and with the influx of new hires, we never expected to receive salaries so soon. We struggled to comprehend the situation, but my father waved off our concerns. "Your hard work has rejuvenated the team. They've been grateful for your efforts and dedication. I couldn't possibly leave such exemplary employees unpaid, and our company's performance has improved significantly. Thank you truly," my father expressed sincerely. Grateful and humbled by his generosity, we accepted the envelopes, overwhelmed at the unexpected recognition and support from both my father and our new colleagues. As we hugged each other, overwhelmed with emotion and gratitude, the impact of our efforts sank in. My father's recognition of our hard work and dedication touched us deeply. Then he surprised us with an even more heartwarming proposal. "Tom, I'm impressed with your leadership. If you're okay with it, would you marry her?" my father asked, his voice filled with sincerity and joy. Yes, of course. I'm honored and grateful," Tom replied tearfully, bowing to both me and my father. Overwhelmed with happiness, I embraced Tom, tears streaming down my face. Thus, we decided to get married, surrounded by love and support. Our marriage unfolded amidst our continuing work at my father's company, where we grew more proficient and began contributing more strategically. Tom immersed himself in overseeing operations across the factories and subsidiaries, ensuring efficiency and proposing innovative solutions to my father. Our dedication to our work fueled our passion, making each day fulfilling and purposeful. However, a new chapter was about to begin as I prepared to go on maternity leave. My father, Tom, our colleagues, and I eagerly anticipated the arrival of our child, looking forward to the next phase of our lives together.